But it would do me no good to get rid of resentments if I didn't know how to keep them from coming back. Because the world is full of sick people. And they're going to do it to me again tomorrow. And if I'm not careful, I'll resent. And it seems as though I don't get just one. When I get one, let me play with it just a little bit, and then I've got two. And let me play with those two, and then I've got 10. And the next thing you know, I'm a basket case, and I'm sick all over again. I've got to do one more thing. And let's go to page 67.
Okay. We try to disregard the other person's involvement entirely. Let's forget about what they did. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them, we placed them before us in black and white. We admit our wrong, so we'll straighten out these set these matters straight. Now we're going to look at how we were involved, what part of our character was associated with this resentment. You know, we're going to get down to the truth. Usually, before we do these resentments, as the book said earlier, there's usually people are always picking on us. Now, resentment we're going to find is a good way. The reason we play a resentment over and over and over is that every time you play it over, you can cast the blame on them and get it away from yourself. And after you play that for a few weeks, they're just as mean as hell, and you just as pure as a driven snow. And it's a big lie. But we're trying to get down to the truth. Now we want to look and find out what did we do? You know, no one, if we look at this, in case of my thing, in every resentment, I had done something. Most of the cases, I did something. And then these people retaliated and struck me. And then I resented the hell out of them and put the blame on them to disregard what I had done in the first place. You know, I had a number one resentment.
Let's look at the exact nature of this resentment. Now, the resentment is the wrong. That's right. That's what's blocking me off from God. But let's look at the exact nature of this thing. I went to the dictionary, looked that word nature up. That means the inherent characteristic of something. What's at the core of it? What really is the truth about this resentment? Now, always before, by God, they did it. Now, this time, we're not going to look at what they did. We're going to look to see if we played a part in it, and we're going to look to see what we did. Now, this is brand new for we alcoholics. We've always looked at them and never really looked to see the part we played in anything. Let's look at it truthfully.
Okay, you want to analyze it? I had one against my mother-in-law. I thought it was legal to resent your ex-mother-in-law. I really resented this woman.
We're going to do it left to right because we're just going to do these one or two, but normally we would be going top to bottom.
Okay.
On this particular one, we'll go left to right.
And finally, I had to this was one of them resentments I was going to take it to the grave. I wasn't going to let nobody know about this. Just resent the hell out of this woman. And keep it to myself, my personal resentment. So, I resented her terribly. This used to eat me up. That was one of them kind where you sit on a bar and tell a complete stranger, let me tell you what she did to me, man. He don't even know. Okay. Well, I put a name down. I said, that ain't helping. I got mad as hell when I saw her name. And then they said, what did she do? Well, she broke up my marriage. Well, that made it worse. Now, I said, this ain't helping a bit. They said, go on and finish it. Well, what part of self did she affect? Well, she wiped out the whole thing. My self-esteem, personal relationship, material security, emotional security, acceptable sex life, and all my ambitions. Now, I'm mad in hell now. I'm worse now than before I started this. Then it said, well, what did you do? Oh, I didn't do nothing. No, I didn't do nothing. And the trick was, it was really a tricky thing. I had really never done anything personally to this woman. But while looking at this, I finally found out what I had done to her daughter and her grandkids. How through my selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, inconsiderate character, what I had lived and how I had treated them in my drinking. And I realized that this woman retaliated against me to protect them, that she did not hate them. She did what any decent woman would do to protect her offspring. And that was the truth of it. And over the years, what I had done, I had used her as a scapegoat. I went around resenting the hell out of her so I could blame all of it on her, so I wouldn't accept my own, what I had done. And I use that. That's what a resentment is. It's a way to transfer blame from you to other people. You know, this, you can look at that other one there. It's one there, it's a classic there, Mr. Brown, in the first column.
Page 65.
Told my wife about my mistress in the second column. And what that affected? It affected his sex life, it affected his self-esteem, it caused him a lot of problems. And he resented the hell out of Brown. He was mad at Brown. But let's go over to the fourth column. If he hadn't been so selfish and dishonest and self-seeking, he wouldn't have had a mistress. If he didn't have had a mistress, Brown would have had nothing to tell. So he started the whole thing. Then he blamed it on Brown. See? It's an escape mechanism that seems to trap the victim, you know, the one that does this. A resentment is a shortcut way of getting out of things that ends up trapping you with a resentment, like the callous. So, but we really, to get down to the truth and analyze, you can see those things, and the truth will set you free from the lie, which is the resentment.
My wife Barbara's name was first name on the resentment sheet. Why? She filed for divorce 3 times the last year I was drinking, spending more money on lawyers with divorces than I was on drinking and everything else. What part of self was affected? Self-esteem, personal relationships, material emotional security, acceptable sex life. And I really did resent that lady for doing that until I finally looked into column 4. Disregarding what she did, period. What part did I play in that? What did I do to set things in motion? And I saw an old character out there in that 4th column that was selfish, dishonest, self-seeking and frightened and inconsiderate. And based on my selfishness, I was out there doing things I shouldn't have been doing. I got caught at it. If I hadn't have been so damn dishonest, I wouldn't have been running around lying to her and sneaking around behind her back in the first place. If I hadn't have been so frightened that I was approaching 40 years of age and I better get out there and get it done now before I get too old to do it. If I would have considered my wife and my children a little more, I wouldn't have been out there doing that stuff. And if I hadn't been doing that stuff, she couldn't have caught me and she wouldn't have filed for divorce. I realized, hell, she's just reacting like a normal woman should react in that situation. I'm the guy that set it in motion. I hated the Internal Revenue Service. God, I hated them. Why? They try and put me in jail. What part of self is affected? Nearly all of them. Until I looked in the 4th column. If I hadn't been so dishonest, I wouldn't have been cheating on the income tax in the first place. And if I hadn't been cheating, they wouldn't have been after me. And I thought, Jesus, is all these resentments going to be this way? And to my amazement, I did not have a resentment, period, that I had not done something to set it in motion, based on that old character out there in that 4th column. And then those people and those institutions had retaliated against me. And then I had used a resentment to very effectively block out the part I did and transfer all blame to them. Hell, no wonder I love resentments. Every time I played that over in my head, they got worse and I got better, and after a while I could make myself just as pure as the driven snow. Now, if you're a practicing alcoholic, you've got to develop these kind of skills. You can't live without the ability to do this. I don't think we could live with ourselves if we had to honestly face what's going on in our life when we're drinking. But you see, we don't even have to look at it, because we have a very effective means through our resentments to transfer blame to other people, judge them incorrectly, and free ourselves of it, and then we can go right ahead and do whatever we want to do. Now, if I stay in that fourth column the same way, if I stay selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened, and inconsiderate, I'm going to keep right on doing the same things over and over again. I'm going to keep right on hurting people. They're going to retaliate against me. I'm going to transfer blame to them through resentments. I'm going to block me off from the sunlight of the Spirit, and I'm going to end up drunk. This is the first time in my life I've ever looked at me honestly. But just think, if I could become a little less selfish, not perfect, but a little less selfish, if I could get just a little honesty in my life, if I had a little more courage or more consideration for other people, then maybe I wouldn't do some of those things I've been doing. And maybe I wouldn't hurt people, and maybe they wouldn't retaliate against me, and maybe I could have some peace of mind and serenity and happiness. You see, what we're really looking at in the fourth column is the standard, basic character defects that all human beings have. That all the other basic character defects stem from these four. And those are the things that cause human beings to hurt each other. Now, if I can change that, then I might be able to start living with some peace of mind, serenity, and happiness. What I've really done here is set myself up for the rest of our program resentment-wise. I'm doing step 4. That's what I'm involved in right now. Out there in the fourth column, I have the exact nature of the wrongs that I'm going to talk about to God and another human being in step 5. I'm going to have those things I'm willing to turn loose of in step 6. I'm going to have those things that I'm going to ask God to take away from me in step 7. And it doesn't make any difference what we call them. We can call them a wrong, a fault, a mistake, a defect, a shortcoming, or whatever. Also, those people in the first column, in my particular case, every name came off of that first column and went on the list for steps 8 and 9. You know, our book tells us we are making our amends list as we do step 4. And I was amazed that I'd heard all those people. And I think you might be amazed too when you look at these resentments closely. Most of them, we ourselves set them in motion. Now, I'm sure that some of you have probably resentments against people from the past based on things that they have done to you that maybe you didn't play any part in that at all. But knowing that a resentment blocks us off from God, knowing that it will probably cause us to get drunk, if we still carry a resentment that we didn't have any part in, we need to really look at it and see what we're doing with it. Because if it's going to get us drunk and we still want it, then we must be using it for something. The lady in the story used her resentment against her mother to justify her lack of education. Bull. She could have gotten an education if she'd have wanted to. She used the resentment against her mother to justify her marital failure. Bull. Why, she even used her resentment against her mother to justify her alcoholism. Bull. We are responsible for what we are. We see a trend going on today in AA that I think is going to give a lot of people a lot of trouble. They're beginning to sit around in meetings, go clear back to the family of the beginning, and analyze why mother did it, and why father did it, and what made them that way, and etc. What difference does it make? They did it. It's done. It's a part of the past. We can't change that.
Group resentment.
Then we sit around and we analyze We try to analyze why what they did made us the way we are. What difference does it make? That's the way we are. The thing is, how do we get rid of that crap? And if a resentment's going to cause me to drink, if I'll pray for those people, the resentment will disappear and I'll be free of the past, and it makes no difference why they did it. If I don't get free of the past, I'm going to drink over it just sure as anything. Now let me tell you something. Bill Wilson was an adult child of an alcoholic. There is no doubt about that at all. If there was ever a dysfunctional alcoholic family, it was Bill Wilson's family. Bill recovered through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's not an alcoholic alive today that can't recover through the same 12-step program if we'll do the simple things that the book tells us to do. List them, analyze them, pray for them, and you can be free of the past, and then you're free to go on to the future. But if we hang on to the past, we'll never be free of the past, and we'll never be satisfied in the future. This thing really does work, and it is so simple that sometimes it scares me. Sometimes it amazes me how simple this thing really is. And we alcoholics with our complicated minds are trying to make something more difficult out of something that's real simple. Try it and see if it won't work for you. I guarantee you it will, Joe.
Yeah, Charlie, I think, I'm really shocked at the trend, where we sit around and dig up all these fraudulent ideas about why we're alcoholics and blame them on other people. I think it's very dangerous. We get all the sick people together and have group resentment meetings. We all sit around and blame. I guess we'll have to blame Adam and Eve. They're the ones who started. Poor things. The thing about it, I think that one thing that we find out, though, we know about life, and life is simple. And what our program is teaching us is that it is our fault. And I think it's very valuable that it is our fault. I think that once we see that once it is our fault, that we are involved, then we can do something about ourselves and we can be free. But every time we turn our lives over to other people and blame it on somebody else, we trap ourselves that much deeper. And I think the greatest way to be free is when something happens, I say, boy, I sure hope it's my fault, because then I'll have a change. But if it's somebody else doing it, then I was just turning my life, I say, constantly over to other people. So that's very dangerous, and I think we see a complete opposite in what our program is telling us to do. I think we look very closely at it, and that we do have a program to be free, not from alcohol, but free from everything. If it's our fault, then we got to change.
We hope nobody takes this wrong. Yeah. We're not trying to put anybody down. No. And we're not trying to tell anybody what they need to do and what they don't need to do. But it just doesn't make any sense to let somebody hurt us 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 years ago and still sit here today and let them continue to hurt us. As long as we're dealing with that stuff, they're controlling the way we think. And if they control the way they think, they block us off from God. And it senseless to let something that was so tragic that happened years ago continue to control what we're going to do today, when we can get free of that. And this is a simple procedure to do that. And it's try it. Try it. And if you don't want to get rid of it, look at it. See what you're doing with it. One reason we like to hold resentments is because we can rationalize. We can say, well, if they hadn't been that way, if they hadn't done that to me, then I wouldn't have to do these things today. And we can use a resentment to rationalize and justify and excuse ourselves and do nothing. Hell, let's get them out of our life and get happy and free and peaceful and go on about our business.